So, I don't know how many of you guys were here for Sergio's teaching on James. Today's going to be a somewhat similar scenario. I wonder if I should wait for them to get back.
I think Stacy might stay down there. But
Jess is going to stay down there. She wants playtime, you know her.
I don't think they're hilarious. I don't know. Are the muffins ready?
Muffins are ready.
Do we want to pause and get muffins?
Oh,
And give them time to actually.
that's a good idea.
Twist my arm, but sure.
Okay.
The pregnant lady wants muffins. We're having muffins.
I figured that'll be. Oh.
Oh, did we go out?
This one's a fragile little puppy. Fortunately, it'll restart pretty easily.
Okay.
But if I set it down and it jostles in any way while setting it down, it automatically just freeze. It's a special little creature. Granted, I can't be too surprised because my children,
I'm pretty excited because
managed to drop it off.
I think earlier in the year he got like a score of 19.
Pull the desk out.
Oh,
really?
He probably got like 49.
The whole casing.
That's
so
good
improvement.
It's not like you just say, here, $500.
Well, the nice part is it's a district computer, so they were able to just send it out.
Yeah, so does he want to eventually get over here?
Yeah.
But
Are you making more coffee?
I am. Because God gave coffee. God gave man coffee because he loves it.
They're interesting, right?
Yeah.
They're cool to do what they do.
It would be.
I really like stamping and wiping his butt with leaves.
Well, better.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
man,
It depends.
everything. But of course, the door is like,
If she doesn't like it, then we'll come back up.
I'm sure you can.
That's usually how we go. So I figured we would take a break on that. See what's crazy yet. Yum.
You missed it. It was the shortest teaching ever.
God is great. Let's go. Let's just put it this way. God would agree.
Just trying to take it easy.
Yeah.
But then I didn't get work that night, so I'm still kind of like, I got a lot to do.
What manna was
what Sergio's doing.
Honey wafer muffin.
Which is the kind we wanted to.
I just raised muffins too.
It will be ready.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. That would mean that when Jesus Christ said, I am the true mom from heaven. Is it
I am the true one.
I got like.
Yeah, one Lord, one God, one muffin.
Teaching them and I taught them exact
Hi.
Whoa.
How about you?
And then we're wrong back here.
well, good.
That's brilliant. Kenny, did you hear that there were muffins brought?
You're gonna go to California.
Yes. Do you think that she's gonna bring you a muffin downstairs?
In a week.
I have muffins
Or
already.
Should we give her a plate? We'll bring her a plate.
I'm taking this week off of work for finals.
How's it going?
Are you doing pretty decent in your classes?
Yeah, I need 20% on my math final to get to pass. That'll be easy. But I have to decide if I'm going to write a program or take a written final for
Taylor,
my
are you gonna
multimedia class. And the program seems really hard. And
So glad you're all
it's really dense. So I don't know if I could do any better on an exam.
Okay.
But at least with a program, I can take as much time as I want.
I love you, but don't touch me.
Don't bring
And I have
Stand there.
13 to 18 pages to write for
That's correct.
I want to see you work at a distance.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
The teacher's a softie, so I think for the longer portion, I can do like
Okay.
do maybe 8 pages instead of 10, and then we have
So you have to
31
be able
page
to
essay questions as
All right.
final besides the final.
Maybe a month or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Never know.
So after this semester,
Mommy
how
brought
far
you.
are
Haven't made it.
You're
Oh, really? I'll start at 95 semesters.
Okay, you are.
To everybody currently watching, we apologize for the intermittent comments. We'll be regathering here in just a moment.
It's like,
Nobody ever
I thought-
stop watching their hair.
No, the girls, I think what it is that the girls like to like play with each
Classes.
other's hair and like comb for each other's
over
hair. And so they're
5
doing
semesters,
that,
there's
right?
5 of them.
Stuff at track, and doing like, and then they're like,
5 classes I have to take.
Yeah,
they
there's like,
keep
well, there's like
playing
electrical
with each
questions
other.
on it. It's like,
Yeah, there's actually
Like,
7
our question that carburetor,
Well,
well,
depending on where you are in math, there's
Competition.
potentially 8
Distracting.
in
And
the grade you have to take in a row. So I did math, or you miss one, or some of them are awkward every semester. It's almost impossible to finish it. Or years because
Well,
you
are you talking about the
precise.
classes that are only offered up front?
Yeah.
I am going to regather everybody back up. I am going to state to all of you
Yeah.
that due to the nature of the teaching, if you weren't able to get coffee and it is still brewing, you do not have to all feel bad to stand up and get coffee as such. It's basically manna from it, but it's okay. And I don't know how that's justified. One being a liquid, the other being a solid, whatever. Okay, don't question. There's no logic.
Sorry, Andrew.
it's still reserves.
Step on your feet.
Oh yeah, you guys. So we're gonna look at a couple of different scenarios today. And actually over the next couple of teachings that I do, I don't know if they'll be back to back in terms of the weeks or if they'll be spread out, but I kind of found a new trend of where I want to go for my next series of teachings basically. And it's going to be looking at a lot of different portions in the Old Testament. Now the Old Testament is there for our understanding and for our betterment of understanding. But it is not particularly essential to everything that we do and know. And Taylor, if you're feeling like helping people, you could plug in the laptop that's about to die.
Oh.
So we're going to start off and we're going to look at a little bit of the Old Testament and kind of look at some of the things that were written, but might not specifically be written for us in our time as it stands. So let's go to Deuteronomy 25. Now, no, you're fine. I'll let you know. Now, Deuteronomy 25 actually has some stuff which is extremely valid, and we're going to look at two different pieces of information that at the time that it was given were highly applicable to the people it was written to. And we're going to kind of compare as to whether or not the information that's written there is really applicable to us at this day and age. Is all of the Old Testament there expressly for a relevant purpose in our lives? So we're going to start at Deuteronomy 25:5, and I'm going to have, if Andrew would be willing, Andrew read 25:5 through 12. Now, like I said, this is two pieces of information, and we're going to talk about them individually after they've been read.
25:5 through 12. If brethren dwell together, and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she bears shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders, and say, My husband's brother refuses to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. he will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak unto him, and if he stand to it and say, I like not to take her, then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders, and loose his shoe from off his foot, and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, so shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house. And his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loosed. When men strive together...
That was first section. Now we're going to go to the second section.
Verse 11. When men strive together one with another, and the wife of the one draws near to deliver her husband out of the hand of him that smites him, and puts forth her hand and takes him by the secrets, then thou shalt cut off her hand, thine eye shall not pity her.
Okay. So, you can't make this stuff up, guys. It's there in the Bible. Okay. We have two components here. One of which is, both are part of the law, and one of which is a statement about how one should deal with family and family affairs in regards to a widow within the family. Now this component, though it seems very strange, the idea of if you will not take on your brother's wife, then the proper protocol is for the widow to take off the man's shoe and spit in his face. And then basically say, this is your new name, the one who had his shoe loosened. Okay? Is it applicable in our day and age? Is it something we're going to run into that's actually going to be of quality bearing to us? Probably not. However, this is a component that has a great deal of significance in terms of understanding. So where else do we see this specific instance of the law very useful in our understanding of parts of the Old Testament? Does anybody know? Ruth. Okay. So with, you okay?
I started joking for a bit.
So without an actual understanding of this law, the book of Ruth would be really, really confusing. Okay? Like the whole interaction there would just be like, and nobody would get it, and it would go straight over our heads. However, the next piece of information in the law is not only not exactly applicable in today's day and age. I'm just going to say, if two people are fighting, it's not typically the wife's first thought to grab the man by the privates and pull him out of the fight. Okay? It is secrets. If you look at the translation, there's a whole plethora of really exciting ways that you can translate that. Okay? But it's not exactly applicable to us today. And it's not really something that's going to further our understanding of different instances in the Bible. Okay? However, it wouldn't be put in there if it wasn't in some way a custom or tradition or applicable to the people that we're reading in the Old Testament. So where I'm going with this is the New Testament does tell us to look at the Old Testament and to recognize the significance of it and to look for the things that are important and applicable to us and that will help us in our understandings. But it's our job to rightly divide what those things are. What is going to be relatable to the New Testament? What is going to be relatable to our lives currently? And how do we best take those components and build ourselves up? Now, this one is something that's a personal opinion and not directly from the Bible. But also, I think a lot of what the Old Testament is there for is really to add to our understanding the perfection of God's Word. And what I mean by that is, the more we start to read into the Old Testament, and the more you look at the Old Testament, the more the perfection of the Word comes out. We all know that the Bible as a whole was written over a couple thousand years. And for the perfection of many of the things in the Old Testament to still apply to the New Testament, and how closely they reside and how perfectly they interact, it's very hard to believe that it was penned just from the insight of man. It almost leads us to a greater believing of God through the perfection of the entire Bible as a whole. So we're going to start to look at one of those amazing and perfect scenarios today. through what is going to, like I said, be a series of teachings on what is called the archetype of the Messiah, or the type of the Messiah. So does anybody here know what an archetype is? We're talking English papers and fun stories. Okay, cool. So you all get an English lesson too. No. I guess I spent an entire year in high school learning about archetypes, so it's pretty ingrained. So an archetype is basically a character that has similar traits and a similar plot line. Okay? And in almost any story, there's about 12 to 13 different archetypes that can be defined. There's the archetype of the hero, the archetype of the fool. There's all these other ones. But what isn't a popular culture archetype is the Messiah. Okay? However, what we have here in the Bible is the type of a Messiah that is relevant and reoccurring over and over and over again. Now, what I mean by that is we all know that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. But if you look at the similarities between Jesus Christ's life and those of previous prophets and primary figures within the Old Testament, many of the similarities are uncanny. Okay? It's almost unbelievable how similar their lives were. And it's almost a cycle of specific prophets living out a similar but lesser life with a similar but lesser purpose than Jesus Christ, leading up to his final coming for our salvation. So today we're going to take a look at one of those archetypes, and probably one of the most directly applicable ones. And we're going to look for similarities between them. We're going to focus on Moses. Now, Moses is an easy one to find because Moses isn't one that we have to imply was a type of the Christ archetype, but they specifically tell us in the Bible that it is. So let's go to Deuteronomy 18:15. And we are going to be in Deuteronomy, Exodus, and Numbers like all over the place today. So if you guys have a bookmark, toss it near there. If you guys don't, just know that. We'll go from there. So in Deuteronomy 18:15, whoa there. You will see that it specifically states, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren. Him you shall hear. So this is Moses speaking at this point. And Moses specifically says, you know, God has already told me that from within your brethren, there will be another one who is raised up like me. There's going to be somebody else who is raised up similar to me, and you should hear him. Okay? Now, keep your finger or something in Deuteronomy, and let's go to Acts 7:37. Now, even though in the Old Testament this was a prophecy, this was something that was told that nobody who was living at that time would ever see come to pass. Okay? In this instance, it's something that the scholars who were studying the Old Testament, remember how our conversation is some of it's applicable to you, some of it is not, found that it was very, very applicable once Jesus Christ had came. Because if they had studied them, they're going to see the same similarities that we will coming to fruition, leading to the fact that Jesus Christ is indeed the prophet that Moses had spoken of. Now, throughout the Old Testament, we typically, everyone knows the red thread, which is all the prophecies that were given that lead up to Christ. The same is true through this same reoccurring archetype. It is an echoing or a foreshadowing of the greater Messiah to come. So in Acts 7:37, we see it state, and I'm reading out of the New King James when I'm quoting these. This is that Moses who said to the children of Israel, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your brethren. Him you shall hear. Now, him you shall hear is kind of a debatable scenario. They don't know if people added it in. It's somewhere back and forth within the Greek or within the critical texts. But ultimately, you'll see here that Stephen, who was writing portions of this, states or I should say speaking portions of this, states, this is the Moses that was promised. Okay, he brought it directly back to Deuteronomy. He quoted Deuteronomy. He showed the people of that time that this was the prophet that was spoken of. So when it comes to the idea of Jesus and Moses being similar and being alike prophets, what do they actually have in common? If Stephen is to make this statement that they are similar, what is it that was actually similar about them? I mean, is it something that God concealed very deep down and made it so that it was very, very hard to be like, this is Moses? Or is it the idea that Moses and Jesus Christ were only similar because they were both chosen of God? Or what is it that these two individual figures actually have in common? And this is where we bring in our recorder.
Yes, I have one. They both have beards.
Oh, there's no scripture to back that up.
Dang it!
You could write that both of them probably had beards.
Both
Probably had beards. We aren't quite sure. But seriously, let's start through, and this is where it's going to become a participatory event. Let's start at the life of either of them. So what happens when...
Are we doing like a teach chart or like a Venn diagram?
we're doing a list, because that's how it is here. Let's start in Exodus 1:15. I'll give you guys the first one.
Oh, I know what it is. They're both slated to die upon birth, right? Hera and
Ding, ding, ding! We have our first similarity. I won't read through them. And I have the magical ability to actually go through and look these up on Blue Letter Bible. So if you guys don't want to go through a magical scavenger hunt, which is kind of fun, I can look some of them up and speak them out to you guys. What'd you say? So, Exodus 1:15. Anybody got it? Did I say 1:15 or did I say something else?
15, I think.
Here, let me check it. Exodus 1:15, 16. We can just read
And the
15.
king of Egypt, this one?
Yep.
The Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah. That one.
Sure.
And he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, see them upon the stools. If it be son, then ye shall kill him, but if it be a daughter, then she shall live.
Okay, good. And right there we have the idea that if it is a male and it is born of a Hebrew, it is to be killed. If we look at Matthew 2:16, Mr. Recorder.
Exodus 1:15.
Exodus 1:15 and 16. We have...
Or Matthew what?
Do you guys want me to, do you want to stay in the Old Testament or the New Testament? Which one do you guys want to stay in? You guys stay in the Old Testament. I'll jump to the New Testament to make your lives a little bit easier.
Is my writing large enough for the kids at the back of the class?
No.
Matthew 2:16, it states, Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So we have, when each of them was born, there was a decree to kill all the children in that land. First similarity, pretty obvious similarity. It's not like that one's something that happened very often in the Old Testament. Kind of significant.
Didn't both of them have angels that talked to their fathers before they were even born? I can't remember if that's recorded in the Bible, the version for Moses.
I don't think it's recorded for Moses.
Okay.
But we can go similar to what Moses' lineage is. Does anybody know what Moses... Who was Moses born to? Does anybody know?
His wife's name, sister's Miriam. Mama is some other weird Hebrew name.
Okay, let's go to Exodus 2:1. Like I said, I'm going to keep you guys in the Old Testament. You having fun there? It's not on until you go draw with crayon.
There you go.
Exodus 2:1. And John, would you read that for us?
And there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi.
Okay, who does Levi? What does the house of Levi end up being?
Priesthood.
Priesthood. What does Jesus Christ end up being? Priest of Judah. Melchizedek. You can go on and on. So both of them are from a lineage of a priesthood. Good for them, making stuff go on and on.
What?
So what happens after these little babies are born? Everybody's told to kill them. How do they survive?
Well.
They're raised somewhere differently than what they're supposed to be raised.
Okay, let's go to Exodus 2, 2 through 5. And Janelle, will you read that for me?
And the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of... Okay.
Sorry for cutting you off, Ruby. So basically it's the idea that he was sent down to Egypt to be hidden, basically. He was hidden for a couple of days, then he was put in a basket, went down to Pharaoh in the capital of Egypt, where he was then taken care of. Similarly, in Matthew 2:13, we see, and when they departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take thy child and his mother, and flee thee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. So each of them takes the child and hides it in some variety of way, leading to its ultimate protection. Just so happens that both of them end up being in Egypt. Where do we go from there? Anybody know? Okay, we'll keep on reading. Let's read Exodus 2:6. I think that's where you were going. Janelle, if you want to finish that one.
And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, This is one of the Hebrews' children.
Okay, so Hebrews are also Israelites. Moses was an Israelite. If we go and look at our lovely Savior in John 4:22.
What was the Old Testament verse?
Exodus 2:6. We see, ye worship, ye know not what. We know that we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. Jesus is of the Jews. Jews are Israelites. They're both Israelites. Okay? Do you guys want to continue playing the Do You Know What's Next game, or do you just want me to give them to you?
I'll play.
What was the New
Okay,
Testament
get
verse?
into it.
John 4:22. Huh? No, we can continue going through. Let's see how many we can get, and then I'll go from there. So what else is similar between them?
They're both boys.
Okay, so that one is true. Both male figures. Unless there's something we really weren't being told about in the older New Testament.
They're both raised outside the Jewish or the Israelite community.
Okay.
I kind of already said that.
Yeah.
They both serve the one true God.
Okay.
Prophets.
We could go to
Both
they're
had
both
education.
faithful. So let's go to Numbers 12:6 through 8.
I wonder how old they were when the Spirit.
Yeah.
We were discussing earlier that another archetype of Christ is Joseph. And Joseph was placed in a figurehead of authority at the age of 30, the same way that Jesus was, which is interesting.
Oh, guess who's turning 30 this year? Everyone we know.
Y'all better step it up. Okay, Numbers 12:6. And he said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and I will speak to him, or speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses, so I guess it's 17, my servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house.
17?
Yeah.
Not 7, 17. Numbers 12:6.
7. You're right.
Okay.
So, too many numbers.
Numbers.
Get it? It's a deep rabbit hole, kids. Also, in the New Testament, Jesus over and over and over again was said to be faithful. In 1 Corinthians 10:23, he's said to be faithful. Hebrews 2:17. Revelation 1:5. So we have the idea that both of them were faithful to the one true God. Good. What else?
Wait, we got lost.
They both had sidekicks.
They both had sidekicks. Who and how many?
Their sidekicks both screwed up.
That's actually one of them, yeah.
Aaron.
So Moses and Aaron.
And
Jesus and who?
The 12.
Okay, so let's actually look at the idea of the 12. Let's go to Numbers 13:1. You don't have to have that on there if you can manage it without.
that's the child-proof thing that we did there.
And John, or Sarah, come on Sarah, would you read Numbers 13:1?
Yes.
Let's see if I got the right verse.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying.
Yeah. Go to 2. Actually, we're going for a while. That's actually where we're stopping. That's the significant.
They both said things.
But we can look at that as the idea that the Lord spoke to both of them directly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Send out men that they research the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Of every tribe their fathers ye shall send a man, every one a ruler among them.
Okay, stop. So how many tribes of Israel are there?
12.
How many disciples are there?
12.
Okay, and the disciples were sent into the world so that they could bring people to the promise of Jesus Christ and our salvation. Whereas the 12 spies were sent into Canaan so that they could bring people to the promised land. 12 and 12. There we go. There's not enough people.
What's the verse Numbers 13:1 through what?
13:1 through 2. And then for the other one, you can write Mark 16:15. Okay, good. So they all had sidekicks. Now we talked about brothers there for a minute.
Oh yeah.
Both of them had brothers that pretty much didn't always do what they were supposed to. Yeah. So let's read Exodus 31:1. Let's head there. And I'm going to have Tristan read that if you would be so kind.
31:1.
Yep. And it'll actually be a little bit more than that because that one also starts with, and the Lord spoke to Moses saying.
So here what?
Actually, maybe that's the wrong one. That is the wrong verse. So we're going to just go over that story because I think we all know it. What did Aaron do? Aaron the brother. Yeah, he was a high priest, but what did he do when...
Idolatry. Golden calf.
Okay, so the second that he goes up to actually Moses goes up to get these commandments, his brother's like, dude, this isn't working. He's already gone. Let's make some calves and worship them. Okay, so his brother didn't believe in the actual responsibility and the basically ministry of his brother. Okay. Now, if we go to John 7:5, and like I said, I'll play the New Testament game. In John 7:5, we see the idea, or we'll start John 7:4. For there is no man that doeth anything in secret, and he himself seeketh to be known openly. If thou do these things, show thyself to the world. For neither did his brethren believe in him. Then Jesus said unto them, my time is not yet come, but your time is already, or is always ready. Oh, there's a typo in Blue Letter Bible. What does everybody else have for John 7:6? Sorry, you guys. My magical technology failed.
Then Jesus said unto them, my time is not yet come, but your time is always ready.
Always? It says that?
It says always. Yeah.
That's an awkward translation. That's okay. Okay, so we see here, for neither did his brethren believe in him. You guys will remember when Jesus actually went back to his hometown, he couldn't perform any miracles because nobody, including in his own family, except for his parents, believed that he was truly the Messiah. Neither of them believed in the power that he had through God. So that's another similarity within that family issues. We're not actually following through with that.
Brothers.
Silly siblings. And then while we're on the topic of the 12, let's go to Exodus 18:25. Thank you, little recorder.
Where was on?
18:25.
Which Exodus?
Exodus.
Exodus 18:25. So we had discussed the idea that he sent 12 people in as spies, the same way that Jesus sent 12 people out into the world for his ministry. We went over the idea of his brethren not being as cool as they could be in both instances. And now we'll look at the idea of sidekicks and specifically what that was. So, Stacy, would you read Exodus 18:25?
Yes. And Moses chose able men out of out of Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of tens.
Okay, so we see that Moses did indeed have sidekicks. He chose sidekicks to help do his bidding and to help specifically work his ministry through other people, the same way that Jesus ended up doing the same. So what else do we have? What are other similarities that these two have? Because obviously right now we can see that it wasn't specifically easily shown that they were like, I mean, there's not a lot of similarities so
Both
far.
spent 40 days in the wilderness.
Yes, each of them spent 40 days in the wilderness. So let's go to Exodus 34:28. And actually, Moses spent a lot longer than 40 days in the wilderness.
Yeah.
But he did fast for 40 days on a mountain. So if we look at Exodus 34:28, we have, and he, Moses, was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water, and he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. So we see he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. When did Jesus do that? Did Jesus do that? In the wilderness. Being tempted of the devil. And what was the devil going to give him? Everything.
Under the kingdom.
Under the kingdom. He was going to have full leadership and rulership over everything, correct?
Yeah.
What was Pharaoh going to give Moses? Everything. They were both put in positions in which they could forsake what they were meant to do according to God's will and receive rulership and power to an extreme level. Both of them forsook that to do exactly what God had commanded them or asked them to do. So we'll see that once again, the similarity in terms of what they potentially had offered to them in a worldly variety versus the divine that they were supposedly, or I should say supposedly that they were supposed to pursue. So we have that one, good. What else? We can see that God made it very subtle. Right here.
There's some sort of connection between the law and the Moses labor and then.
Let's go to Exodus 34:29. And Joe, do you have a Bible up there?
No, I don't.
John, will you read that one for me?
Just 29.
Yeah, I think so.
And it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down from the mount, that Moses wist not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him.
Keep reading. You're actually going to read a lot. You're going to read to 35:1.
Okay. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come nigh him. And Moses called unto them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned unto him, and Moses talked with them. And afterward all the children of Israel came nigh, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with him in Mount Sinai. Until Moses had done speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. And when Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he took the veil off until he came out. And he came out, and spake unto the children of Israel that which he was commanded. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone. And Moses put the veil upon his face again, until he went in to speak with him. And Moses gathered all the congregation of the children of Israel together, and said unto them, These are the words which the Lord hath commanded that ye should do.
Okay, so we have right there that Moses came down, supplied all the commandments, told them exactly what to do. Matthew 22:37, we see, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, 22:37, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So we see that each of them provided new law and commandment pertaining to the new administrations that they had been placed as the heads of. Also within the significance of the verses in Exodus that we had just read, notice that there's an awkward part in there where it talks about, am I taking too long?
No, sorry, I just have to leave.
No, you're fine. It's talking about the idea that Moses, what time is it? Because I can wrap this up.
No, you're good. It's okay.
Okay, cool. So we'll do two more and then I'll just list off my list of awesome. So right there, notice that there was this awkward scenario where whenever Moses had gotten done talking to God, his face was shining. Pretty weird. But it's only weird because it happened again to Jesus. So let's go. Matthew 17:1. And after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John, his brother, and bringeth them up to a high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them, who? Moses and Elias. So right there, you guys will see that there is the exact same, basically shining within their faces when they were having a conversation with God. So it's that same face of glory, as my research has called it, which is awkward, but that's okay. Okay, yeah, whatever. They say shone with glory. All right, what else do we have? Any other similarities?
We both had a tantrum at one point in ministry.
When was Jesus?
The moneylenders.
Okay, yeah, we could totally go with that. I don't have the scripture for that one because I didn't find it, but yeah, each of them ended up getting angry at one point within their ministry.
So angry at their own people.
Well, that happened all the time.
Sidekicks, tantrums.
Yeah.
All the good ones.
What about
Was Moses' death foretold, or was that just Aaron?
Moses' death was
So
foretold.
they're both their deaths were foretold. They also both had a plan after they were dead.
Yeah, that neither of them
Successors.
specifically got to enter basically into the same benefits that their people saw thereafter. So Jesus never actually got to partake in the ministry that we are in right now. I mean, he's an intercessor and a priest for it, but he's not part of it. The same way that Moses, even though he was an intercessor for God and his people leading up to the promised land, he didn't get to partake in the promised land. And while we were on the topic of his death, let's go to Exodus 32 through 33. And Sarah, if you would read that one.
Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, Whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book.
Okay, so right here, Moses offers his life as a salvation for his people. To basically say, if you read all of it in context, he's saying, I will give up my life because of the idolatry that they have committed. Which, if we look at Jesus, is exactly what Jesus did. So even though Moses offered it and his offering was rejected, Jesus offered it, but Jesus' offering was accepted. So each of them was willing to give up their lives for the sake of their people.
They both died without any effects of old age.
They both died without any actual effects of old age.
Okay, so this is kind of twisted, but I think it works. Moses implemented the first Passover and Jesus was the Passover?
Yeah. So Moses actually told them of the necessity of the first Passover, and Jesus acted as the final Passover. So a start and an end to the Passover sacrifice.
Here we can do the whole thing unfurled when we're done.
Yeah.
Is that ours?
That's ours.
Okay.
Need more colors.
We have 24 downstairs.
I shouldn't laugh at our child's anguish, but it sure is.
Oh, it's turned out.
Okay, so I'm going to go through it. At this point, I think maybe we'll just read them off. So I'm going to start through my gigantic list. I'll ignore the ones that, no, I'll say the ones we already hit. So upon their birth, all of them were basically decreed to kill all the children in the land. When they were born, each of them was born with the basically rights and the potential to be in a priesthood. Each of them was hidden in Egypt at some juncture. Each of them was an Israelite. In both cases, the king that had issued their death sentence, their death is recorded during the time within that. Each of them was faithful. Each of them was said to have been kind. Moses led his people out of Egyptian slavery, whereas Jesus led his people out of slavery from sin. Moses led Israel out of Egypt on the first of Abib, whereas Jesus spiritually led Israel out of sin on the first of Abib. Moses provided manna in the desert, whereas Jesus provided spiritual manna. Moses provided water in the desert, whereas Jesus provides spiritual water to all of his people constantly. He is the living water. Moses and Jesus were both chosen by God to be a leader. Both of them were born in a scenario where their people were being oppressed at the time. Moses turned water into blood. Jesus turned water into wine. Each of them died on a hill. Moses told his people of the need for a Passover. Jesus became the Passover. Each of them fasted for 40 days. Moses founded a new religion of sorts, and Jesus founded a new religion. Both of them communicated directly with God. Both of them performed miracles. Both of them revised an existing religion. Both of them provided laws for their new constituents. Each of them lived in a time where the ruling party hated them. Each of them had brothers that weren't quite up to par. Each of them chose other leaders to help them within their ministries. Each of them gave their people a new identity to live through. Each of them had followers that strayed from their teachings. Each of them prayed for unworthy people to be forgiven. So each of them spent time, if you look into that, Moses, what is considered to be one of his primary traits for intercessing for his people was his prayer with God constantly. Moses led his people to the promised land. Jesus led his people to a promise, which is basically the promised land eventually. Moses sent 12 spies. Jesus sent 12 disciples. Moses appointed 70 rulers over Israel. Jesus appointed 70 disciples to the nations. Moses was attempted to be stoned multiple times, same with Jesus, because nobody liked them at times. Moses controlled the waters of the Red Sea. Jesus controlled the Sea of Galilee. Moses brought living water out of the rock. Jesus brings living water to all of his believers.
Said that one twice.
Yes, it did. The face of Moses shone with glory, the face of Jesus shone with glory. Moses provided healing for his people, specifically through the brazen snake. Jesus provided a substantial amount of healing to his people on a regular basis. Moses was a shepherd, Jesus was the good shepherd. Moses subdued an attacking army by raising his arms to stop it. Jesus subdued sin and death when he had to raise his arms on the hill, which is kind of cool. Moses said another prophet would come. Jesus said a helper would come upon his death. Those who did not follow Moses died in the wilderness because of their lack of belief. If you start to look at this, this could be taken in two ways for Jesus. One, those who do not believe in Jesus died or will die a permanent death because of their lack of belief. But also, those who didn't follow his actual instruction about the sieging of Jerusalem in 70 AD were all killed. So he basically said, hey guys, you got to get out of here. And they were like, no, and they all died. Moses fed thousands of people supernatural bread. Jesus fed thousands with supernatural bread. Moses took a Gentile bride. Jesus took us as a Gentile bride. Yay, us. Moses led the Israelites in a victory song after the victory in Egypt, which this one is kind of one that not many people would know. But in Revelations, it states that this same song will be repeated when Jesus has victory in the apocalypse, which is kind of cool. There's a long period of silence in between the childhood of Moses and his adulthood. There's a long series of silence in between the childhood of Jesus and his adulthood. Moses showed compassion for a woman at a well. Jesus showed compassion for a woman at a well. Moses' mission was to redeem Israel from slavery. We're repeating that one. Jesus was to do the same. Moses was loved and supported by his sister, Miriam, which is Miriam in Hebrew. Jesus was loved and supported in his ministry by his mother, Mary, which is Miriam in Hebrew. Moses gave God's laws. Jesus gave God laws. More close to the end, kids. Moses offered his life for salvation of his people after the sin of the golden calf. Jesus did the same. Moses rejected a lavish lifestyle. Jesus rejected Satan's offer. Moses washed Aaron and his son's feet with water. Jesus washed the feet of his disciple. Moses became a prince of Egypt. Jesus became a prince of peace. And they were both adopted. Yeah.
I've got one.
What is it?
That Jesus and Moses were the only two people called meek in the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't know if you covered that.
I didn't.
Okay.
I skipped that one. So you guys are going to see there that is about 45 pretty much direct similarities between them. Now the comical and sad part is the Pharisees didn't see it. It's not subtle. It's not something that like crept up on them. There are 45 direct similarities that lead us back to that singular point in which Moses said there was going to be another prophet of his kind. Now, for the Pharisees of the Old Testament, this is one of those things where you should just slap them and be like, really, guys? Really? Oh, I'm sorry. The violence wasn't necessary. But for us today, why is it significant that we see the similarities between these two? Who are we to walk as? Christ. If the New Testament isn't enough, where else can we look? The Old Testament. Over and over again, and as we'll see in many of the teachings, and they aren't all this extensive in regards to quote versus counter quote, but you guys are going to see more and more people that act as just as significant sources to walk like. People that we can look up to, people that we can read about, people that we can start to mold our lives after, people that we can relate to when things go wrong in our lives, and people that we can see have similar problems as Jesus and how they reacted to those. So for our purpose in the New Testament, Old Testament scenarios, we can look to these similar messianic figures as guidance for our life, the same way that we can look to Christ. There's never a lack of instruction in God's word. And we can continue to look back to these figures for that. So that kind of concludes my teaching and your scavenger hunt in terms of the similarities between Moses and Jesus. And next week we are going to look at the sacrifice of Isaac and the sacrifice of Jesus and the similarities between those. And then the following one we'll start to look at Daniel. And then after that, I don't know where we'll go, but there's a couple of other options. Any questions? Everybody get it?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's all clap for our recorder, who had probably way too much recording to do. We'll go from there. For those of you that sat through our temporary muffin outing, we thank you all and hope that you learned something. And God bless you guys.